At long last, nearly 1 year after closing on my second property, I finally closed on my third property. In fact, it was almost 1 year to the day that I closed on my last property. That was back on July 31st of 2020. And I just closed on my third property on July 30th of 2021. So very close to exactly 1 year. And naturally, that means there's been some pretty significant changes to the portfolio in the last month. And I'll be sure to update you on all of that now on this episode of my Road to $1 Million in Net Worth series, where I'm documenting my progress, or lack thereof, in attempting to reach a $1 million portfolio and a $30,000 per year passive income over the next few years, really. I'm currently 24 years old, and my target is to reach these goals by the time I'm 30. And if you're new to the series and want to follow along on the journey, I actually put out a new video every single month on the first of the month, going over any updates from the previous month towards my assets and liabilities. I try to document everything as I'm going through this process. I think transparency in itself is an asset, since it shows the context behind the moves I'm making. Since your situation may be very different, of course, none of this is financial advice, but I do think providing this level of transparency is important, and it provides some extra motivation for me as I try to reach these goals. It keeps me honest to them, since I have to post my updates every single month. But anyways, back to this real estate deal. I'll give you the shorthand version here. I plan on doing a much more thorough breakdown on the numbers, going through the actual property, showing you guys everything there is about this deal in a future video, so be sure to subscribe for that as well. It's kind of a long story, and I want to dedicate its own video to it.
A good question for another time.
In fact, I plan on doing a few videos about this deal, since I think there's a lot to learn from it. Anyways, it's going to be a primary residence in Chicago. It's a townhome pretty close to where I'm already living. It's less than a mile away. Well, I'll be moving into it for the next year. And after that year is over, I would plan on moving out of this property and then renting it out. Once I move into this townhome in the very near future, I'll be renting out my current condo that I'm living in right now and shooting this video from. I bought this property for $285,000, and that's with conventional owner-occupied financing, since I'm moving into the property, so I want to get those great financing terms. That's at 2.99% interest, fixed for 30 years, with only $60 worth of PMI to only have 5% down. That's right, I only had to bring 5% to the table. So not the 20% that you'd probably have to bring for your typical rental property, only 5% down. And even after I move out of this property, I get to keep that financing. And once I move out of this property, the rent that it can bring will offset the entire mortgage, all the expenses, including some reserves for vacancy and capital expenditures, like any responsible investor should have. It'll cover all that, but I won't really have much in the way of cash flow. Instead, the strategy really relies on this great financing, in that I am going to be having about $5,000 in principal paydown per year. Compare that to the $20,000 to $25,000 I actually brought to the table to start with, and that is a pretty healthy return. And that's assuming the property doesn't appreciate at all. Just looking at the principal paydown, that's $5,000 back on my initial investment of $25,000 every single year. So we're looking at something like a 20 to 25% return. And that's just in the first year, at least after I move out of the property. I'm looking at this property as a rental. Even though I'm living in it, I did a rental property analysis to actually get this deal, because I intend to hold it as a rental long term. I don't intend to live in this property forever. But like I said, in the near future, I'll do a much more in-depth breakdown on the numbers with this deal, so stay tuned for that. But in general, that's the gist of the deal. 5% down, $285,000 purchase price. It's probably worth around $290,000 to $300,000 once I do a little bit of extra work to it. I'm going to restain the floors, but again, I'll get to that. Not much in the way of work that's needed, since the seller took care of a few repairs that I would have had to do anyways. And another nice part of this deal is that I was able to represent myself as a real estate agent. Because of that, I got a commission on the back end of a few $1,000s, and that will basically serve as the start to the reserve fund for this property in case it needs repairs in the future. But that is a nice perk of being able to represent yourself. And if you check out the description below, I always include a link to my net worth tracker sheet, where I show my current assets and liabilities, my taxable stock portfolio, and then my real estate holdings, which I just added to this spreadsheet. So it is a full tab dedicated just to my real estate holdings, so you can see which ones have debt on it, what the debt terms are, the general purchase price, and some very quick facts on my real estate portfolio, since now it's 3 properties, and 2 didn't really justify having its own tab, but now we got 3, so thought I'd go ahead and do that. As a reminder, last month our net worth was $80,011.61. As always, let's start with the good stuff, the assets. I've already addressed the elephant in the room, and that's the new primary residence down here of about $290,000. That's the value I'm going to assign to it. We'll call that the book value, even though the purchase price was $285,000. So I'm kind of sort of baking in the closing costs into its own form of equity here, since I do think if I were to sell it tomorrow, I could probably get pretty close to $300,000, and after all the fees and everything associated with closing, I could probably get about $290,000 if I had to liquidate or something like that. So we'll just go ahead and leave that here, even though I don't plan on selling this anytime soon. But this actually brings my real estate portfolio up over $500,000, which is pretty cool. I do plan on making this a much larger portfolio than that, but it is a nice start, and it's nice to see this number continuing to rise. And I'm not really factoring in much by way of appreciation in here. I bet my Chicago rental property one, which was my former primary residence, or I guess is still current as I'm filming this, but not for much longer, the condo here is probably worth closer to 180 now, or maybe even into the 190s, depending on this property that's close to me might be selling up over $200,000, and it probably shouldn't be selling for much more than mine anyway, so there's a chance if I wanted to sell this thing, I could probably get almost $200,000 on a very, very good day. Of course, you need the right buyer, but definitely it's probably worth $180,000, but I'm leaving it at $170 just to be conservative. Same goes for the indie rental. It could probably go for something closer to $110 or $120, but I'm not really factoring that in, partly because I don't really plan on selling anyways, and this is probably the most I can get in something like a cash out refinance anyways. And this is just to keep things conservative, because again, if I'm not planning on selling or doing some sort of cash out refi, it doesn't really matter that I have a ton of equity in the property. At least when it comes to measuring net worth, of course, having lots of equity is a lot better than having no equity. And here's the real estate commission for the deal that I represented myself on, which is kind of nice. You get sort of some cash back at the end. You can look at it like a discount on the property, or perhaps extra purchasing power that I had because I knew I was going to get a few grand back at the end. Sure, it's not very tax efficient. I'm going to have to pay taxes on this income, unless I get write-offs elsewhere, of course, but that is nice to get that money back from the deal. I didn't really do much else with the portfolio because of this real estate deal. It kind of put things on hold. I did pull out some margin, as I'll get to once we talk about liabilities, but otherwise that's pretty much it for the changes in assets. But obviously that's a pretty substantial change to assets in that I have a whole additional real estate property, which is nice to see. I think my focus for the near future will be paying down some debt, but also trying to build up this stock portfolio a bit more, especially in M1 Finance, since that has a very cheap margin option if I want to re-leverage that portfolio. And I want to get that portfolio to be pretty large as a sort of reserve or liquidity tool for buying more real estate in the future while still keeping the cash otherwise invested. It is a riskier approach to having liquidity available for deals, in that the market could always go down, and thus my liquidity would as well. But that's kind of my goal there with building up the stock portfolio. But in total, that leaves me with $715,136.86 in assets. And now onto liabilities. The huge change associated with the deal, of course, is that I have a new mortgage, and this is a 30-year fixed rate loan at 2.99% interest with about $65 per month in PMI until I get to 20% equity or so, since I'm only at 5% right now based on the actual purchase price. But to cover any down payment and closing costs, I actually pulled out quite a bit of margin from M1 Finance. I will pay this down pretty much immediately. I actually have quite a bit of cash left over that wasn't used in the down payment and on closing costs because I got a credit at closing. Again, I'll do a more in-depth breakdown in the near future, but I really didn't have to come out of pocket very much at all once you get past the 5% down payment. Most of my costs were covered because of the credit, as well as tax prorations that were paid from the seller, so I really didn't have to come out of pocket very much at all given the size of the deal. It's not a huge deal by any means, but $285,000 is definitely large given my portfolio size. Anyways, I'll be paying down this margin pretty quick. It's only 2% interest, so it's really not costing me much at all to have it open anyways, but don't want to have that extra interest rate risk, and it's always good to have that margin available for something else when another deal pops up. Right now, I don't have anything in the pipeline, but I'll be trying to get something again soon. The other significant change on my liabilities is the fact that I have a special assessment from my current primary residence that will no longer be my primary residence in a matter of days. This is a special assessment to take care of some exterior maintenance on the building. Every single unit owner is paying something into this special assessment. I actually have the smallest share since I have the smallest unit in the building. But that is a risk with owning condominiums. You never really know when a special assessment might hit you, but you can have a pretty solid idea based on the reserves of the actual association. But it's just another thing to pay attention to. You are not the one who's maintaining the property yourself. Instead, all of the owners are. So you have your proportionate share. And if the association isn't running things very smoothly, there's definitely a higher chance that you're going to need a special assessment in the future. This isn't really much of mismanagement. More so, this is doing some preventative maintenance on the building clean before it gets worse. So I don't really have too many qualms with this. Plus our actual dues that we pay for the association really aren't that high anyways, and they cover our water bills. So really we're not paying much each month anyways. So having a special assessment every now and then to take care of a large exterior maintenance item, it's not all that surprising. And I always keep some extra reserves in a savings account just in case something like this happens. But anyways, that's going to have to get paid. So it's onto liabilities, and that'll get paid within the end of the month. So in total, that leaves me with $625,104.72 in liabilities, which means my net worth is now $90,032.14, which is an increase of $10,020.53. Our debt ratio has grown quite substantially to 87.41% thanks to that pretty hefty mortgage. That should be going down in the near future though once we pay back some of the margin. And our passive income remains at $350 per month, though that should grow pretty significantly once we move out of our current primary residence and then rent that out. So there you have it, a pretty big month, and my net worth has grown to new heights. It has never been at this level before, which is awesome, and we'll see if that trend continues and I keep breaking new personal records. So what's next? Well, like I mentioned, I'm going to be doing some deleveraging, at least in the near future, paying back that margin, especially I think once that's paid off, I'll probably focus on investing more into stocks and other assets, or potentially another real estate deal if it comes up, in which case I'd probably pull out more margin again to cover a down payment or a rehab or whatever it is. I'm definitely looking to do something like a flip in the near future, probably in Chicago just because I'm already here and I have a pretty firm grasp on my local area. So if I could find something, I could actually oversee it more actively than I would if I was investing in Indianapolis for more of a buy and hold, higher yielding deal that you might find elsewhere, the kind that's quite a bit harder to find in many areas of Chicago. But I'm also planning on applying for a couple new credit cards since I've been really hands off on my credit in the last few months in leading up to this deal. You don't want to touch your credit before you're actually trying to get a mortgage, since you want to make sure your credit score is as high as possible so you can get the best terms possible. Typically anything over a 740 is kind of a general rule of thumb. If you're over that, you're probably going to be able to get the best terms as long as your debt to income and all that is correct too. Definitely talk with a loan officer though. But now that I don't have to worry about a mortgage in my own name for at least another year before I can really start shopping again with that kind of financing, since I do have to live in the property for a year, because of that, I thought I might as well take advantage of some of the great credit card reward options out there. Not only just great cards, but great introductory offers. The Chase Sapphire Preferred or Reserved, I forget which one it is. That's offering a pretty huge bonus right now, so that'll probably be target number one, but I'll keep you posted on that. And beyond investing, I will have to be moving into a new house over this next month, so that'll take some time for sure. But otherwise, I'm super pumped because this was a big step in the right direction for my real estate portfolio. At least time will tell if it really is a great step in the right direction, but it certainly feels like I'm making more progress. This was a big jump this month in the net worth numbers as well, and that trend should continue if all goes well and I keep trying to make progress, trying to buy quality assets, whether it be stocks, real estate, even cryptocurrencies, though that's going to remain a pretty small portion of my portfolio. But I have to be careful because I do have a lot of debt to worry about. Now, I do have reserves set aside for each property, even this new one I have. Not a ton for the new one yet, though that's going to be priority number one, is getting some more reserves set aside. I usually don't count that in my net worth numbers because I treat it more like an expense. So you're not seeing that I do have some reserves there, which would probably lower my debt ratio a bit. But rest assured, I do have reserves and I have enough to cover at least a few months on every property of mortgage payments, expenses, all that stuff that comes with holding a property, even if it doesn't have any income coming in. But otherwise, definitely check out my updated net worth tracker spreadsheet in the description below if you're interested. Again, it shows all my detailed holdings in real time, including my stock holdings and stock breakdowns, as well as my real estate holdings in its brand new own tab. And like I mentioned earlier, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new updates on this series, as well as my other content, since I put out new videos every single week as they have to do with investing and personal finance. But until next time, take care.